I'd heard this was happening, but I didn't realize it was to this degree. I mean, the numbers are astonishing.
Billions of birds, and biologists are worried that it's not only birds, there are many large species, many important species disappearing from the planet.
Yeah, well, you know, it is the canary. It really is.
Yeah, literally in this case.
I'm afraid so, and it has to do with the bird population that's dwindling at an alarming rate, Audra. New research finds the number of birds in the United States and here in Canada has fallen by 29% since 1970. There are almost 3 billion fewer birds than there were just 50 years ago.
The alarming die-off outlined in a new paper.
It says more than a quarter of the entire bird population disappeared over the last half century.
In fact, scientists say there are almost 3 billion fewer birds on this earth than there were 50 years ago. CBS 4's Jamie Leary wanted to learn more, talk to a researcher at CSU. And Jamie, he says, yeah, it's time to be concerned.
And he was watching this rapid decline along with other enthusiasts even before this study came out. And he has been on a mission for quite some time to show people why this is much bigger than just birds.
A recent study shows the number of birds in North America has dropped by 29% since the 70s. In Colorado, it means a loss of birds like the warbler or the red-winged blackbird.
The projections are not good at all. And so within the next, I think Audubon said in the next 50 years, it could be completely absent from Rocky Mountain National Park.
It means you'll hear less of this.
Even the sounds of our natural places, they're quieter than they once were. There's no doubt about that.
The bird loss is huge, but to Job, it means something bigger.
It's also an indicator of our health as humans, our health of ecosystems that surround us. And
birds have always been a great indicator species.
these are the canaries in the coal mine that are like sounding the alarm.
Peter Mara, senior author and director of the Georgetown Environmental Initiative, calls it an environmental crisis.
I think this needs to be a wake-up call. It's a horrible situation, and it's about time that people did wake up.
I mean, you got to pay attention, right? It's actually happening. And if it's the birds, what's next, right?
All right, moving on to news coming in from Rajasthan now, and it's a troubling one really, where over 10,000 birds have died at Sambar, one of India's largest saltwater lakes.
Though the official toll was 1,500, locals claim the number of dead birds could go up as high as 5,000. Disturbing visuals coming in from Rajasthan.
And the samples of dead birds have now led the Forest Department to believe the cause of death may be something that they still haven't been able to figure out.
But right now, wildlife lovers, bird lovers across Rajasthan and across the world are absolutely shocked with what has happened in Sambar.
There is shock and sadness in Venice, Italy, one of the world's most romantic and beautiful cities.
People wading through the water across St. Mark's Square, one of the most popular tourist spots in the world. Tonight, the mayor declaring a state of emergency now for what he's calling the apocalyptic rising water there.
This morning, another high tide in Venice, swamping the city once more. Tourists stranded on now useless walkways.
They call Venice the floating city. Crisscrossed by canals, for centuries it's been at the mercy of water. Now, though, Venetians say it's getting worse.
Venice floods dozens of times every year. Most of the city is just 4 to 5 feet above sea level. But locals here tell us that this is not normal.
St. Mark's Square is normally postcard perfect. This morning, it was totally submerged.
Floods in Venice are not new, but they're getting deeper and more ferocious.
The mayor declaring a state of emergency, saying the city is on its knees.
Just incredible images tonight.
Famous landmarks like 1,200-year-old St. Mark's Basilica inundated, water flowing through the church.
My life, this was the first time like this.
St. Mark's Square, now a swimming pool. Hotels and shops turned into canals as water rushes through buildings.
Good evening. Mother Nature is throwing everything at Queensland. Severe storm cells dumping massive hailstones, some as large as cricket balls, across the southeast. Thousands of homes are right now without power, all as fires erupt in the wild conditions, with more evacuation.
Australia's fire service chiefs have described conditions as catastrophic. High temperatures, strong winds and dry conditions are making bushfires travel fast.
Stalking Sydney's northwestern fringes for nearly 3 weeks, the fire in the Wallamai National Park this afternoon finally made its move. The huge wall of black smoke reared from the bush, and in its path several properties, including a timber yard and the town of Colo Heights.
More than 80 fires are burning across the state, and on Sunday authorities issued more emergency warnings. The crisis is also expected to intensify on the west coast. Nearly 500 homes have been destroyed over the past week.
I just trying to stop myself from crying. And I'm a man, and I'm pretty tough. You know, and you drive out there and just see the death out there. Everything's dead. That wasn't a fire, that was a monster.
Craig Roberts trapped in the driver's seat, giant hailstones pelting his windscreen, a spider's web of cracks threatening to shatter at any second.
Brisbane weather, beautiful 1 minute, the next.
Drivers had nowhere to go, cramming for cover at petrol stations.
Look at all the cars all jammed in.
The afternoon storm, fast and furious, lashing the southeast from the Sunshine Coast to the Gold Coast. Cricket ball size hail smashing homes. Blanketing backyards, wreaking havoc on playgrounds and playtime. Destruction everywhere, hitting with such force the roof of the Curramundi Woolworths collapsed. Lightning striking this Moreton Bay home, leaving a gaping hole in Christian Patterson's bathroom. It's been so long since we've heard this sound. But for our drought-ravaged region, it just wasn't enough.
It's the dry season in Zimbabwe, but park officials say this year it's much hotter and drier than usual. Hundreds of elephants and other animals are dying.
We've been through some pretty bad ones. When you see animals just walking along, elephants for example, and they just collapse on their legs, they don't even roll over, they just collapse and die. It's very emotionally moving.
This is Mana Pools National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the north. People here say the land has completely changed. This is Long Pool, the biggest watering hole in the national park. There's this distinct smell. Temperatures can reach more than 45 degrees Celsius, and even the fish are struggling. There are too many animals competing for scarce food and water, and many are exhausted.
Sydney's water supply has never emptied more rapidly than now, so quickly that zero water is not that far away.
If the rainfall doesn't improve and we consume the amount that we do, we would be out of water completely in about 2.5 years.
Current forecasts suggest Sydney has enough water to last until May 2022.
With the current rate of depletion, we could be in a very tricky situation in a couple of years. We don't want to scare people unnecessarily.
Livestock dashing across red, scorched earth, peppered with dry weeds and shrubs, the ground cracking from lack of rain. The past 3 years, nothing short of brutal, and farmers like Jeff Power, who has land at Orroroo, are more than feeling the pinch.
This reservoir had water at the start of the year, but it's now dry as a bone. Peterborough and surrounding towns receiving less than a third of the rain required to grow enough feed for livestock.
In my lifetime, this would be the longest dry spell I've known.
Sacked Wallaby star Israel Folau has suggested the deadly bushfires ravaging New South Wales are God's punishment for legalising same-sex marriage as well as abortion. Today, Sydney reporter Gabrielle Boyle is at his Kenthurst church where those comments were made in a sermon. Gabby, take us through what he's had to say this time.
Yeah, good morning, Tom. Well, it seems that every time Israel Folau addresses his community here at his church in northwestern Sydney, he upsets somebody, and yesterday's sermon was perhaps his most controversial yet. He took to the podium to tell the congregation that bushfires and drought were punishment for same-sex marriage and abortion. So certainly some pretty controversial comments. Let's take a look at a little of his address.
You have changed the law and changed the ordinance of these things. Look how rapid these bushfires, these droughts, all these things have come in a short period of time. You think it's a coincidence or not?
Of course, Tom, his multi-million-dollar Rugby Australia contract was torn up earlier in the year for other controversial comments about same-sex marriage, and he is currently taking them to court, taking legal action against that sacking.
A new reality witnessed in real time.
Amazon rainforest. Scientists warn at a record pace, and this could be dire, they say.
3 weeks of raging fires setting off alarm bells around the world.
With the Amazon fires posing a devastating threat to the region and the world.
Tonight, the Amazon rainforest, often called the planet's lungs, is struggling to breathe.
Fires on the island of Evia started Tuesday at about 3 a.m. and were spread by strong winds through dry vegetation, according to local media.
Now, a plaque has been unveiled in Iceland to remember the first of its 400 glaciers to be lost.
Yeah, a memorial like this might seem a little dramatic for an extinct glacier, but organizers are using this to call attention.
Oakukul Glacier used to cover 15 square kilometers of mountainside. Now it is barely 1 square kilometer and less than 15 meters deep.
While this is the first glacier to totally vanish in Iceland, experts say all of the country's ice masses will have melted away forever in the next 200 years. That includes Europe's largest glacier, the Vatnajökull. It's all bad news for Iceland, whose flag is inspired by all three of its key elements: water, fire, and ice.
Yes, there have been other small glaciers to disappear around the planet over the last 20, 30 years, but this is the first one of this size, and that's what makes it significant, because this is a well-known glacier in Iceland. It's storied in children's songs and things like that, so everybody knows about it, so the fact that it's now gone is significant, and it may be a bellwether that more glaciers of prominent size will also be disappearing in the decades ahead, guys. Back to you.
Such a telling sign. Thanks so much, Matt.
Dramatic video of a dying glacier captured on tape. Kayakers Josh Bastier and Andrew Hooper ventured out on what they called a peaceful glacier exploration at Alaska's Spencer Glacier. They noticed a glacial bridge beginning to collapse.
Man, when that whole thing goes, oh, here we go.
As the bridge crumbled, they found themselves in danger, with an 8-foot wave headed directly towards them.
Holy shit!
Riding the wave from the glacier to safety, they retreated, later reflecting on the dramatic events.
Very, very blessed to have seen it and survived it.
What Andrew and Josh witnessed is a new normal. Glaciers cleaving is a normal occurrence. They're becoming even more common. The Spencer is said to recede 100 feet a year.
The Amazon rainforest, often called the lungs of planet Earth, now filled with smoke and fire and choking one of the world's most diverse ecosystems.
Now, it's thought an area about the size of a soccer pitch is lost every minute of every day to deforestation in the Amazon. Record fires causing massive devastation, nearly 73,000 detected by researchers so far this year, an 83% increase from 2018. The fires visible even from space. Those white patches, not clouds, but smoke.
A cold weather system helped by changing winds, pushing smoke into cities more than 1,000 miles away.
Fires engulfing large swaths of the Amazon rainforest. The smoke is traveling far and wide. It darkened the skies over Sao Paulo, which is more than 2,000 kilometers south of the burn area. The scope of the fires is massive.
The fires in the Amazon rainforest so huge they're even visible from space. Strong winds pushing the smoke hundreds of miles, plunging the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo into darkness.
Images emerged on Monday of Sao Paulo in the afternoon, blackened by smoke. One Twitter user likened the images to Batman's grim-looking metropolis, Gotham City.
It's safe to say that if we lose the Amazon, we face ecological collapse.
One of the world's most important natural treasures in flames. Over 9,500 fires have broken out since last week, threatening the most biologically diverse place on Earth and the long-term health of our planet. An area about half the size of the US, these forests produce 20% of the world's oxygen.
The smoke has covered most of the northern half of Brazil, which is larger than the whole of Europe.
The Russian government is preparing to mobilize the military. President Vladimir Putin took the decision to call in the army on Wednesday as fires spread across 3 million hectares of Siberia.
Fires in the Amazon are a natural occurrence, often started by lightning strikes. But that doesn't explain the sudden increase in fires this year, which environmentalists say has been exacerbated by cattle ranchers and soy farmers clearing forest at an increased pace.
This year is worse than ever because Brazil's new president has allowed deforestation to accelerate.
When these fires finally do go away, environmentalists say that damage will have been done.
Here it is really, much of it is permanently wasted, in a sense that it takes ages to regrow a forest and it can never be regrown in the original way.
The Amazon is the planet's biggest tropical forest, nicknamed the lungs of the Earth.
But these fires are a reminder that the Amazon is losing trees at an unsustainable rate.
A vital natural wonder going up in smoke.
On to other news now. A large wildfire has broken out in Turkey's Marmara Islands. The blaze has been active since Monday and has so far destroyed at least 5 houses in the vicinity. As you can see on your screens, the fire was huge and threw up big clouds of smoke into the air. The fire is believed to have started from Bagazda forest, but the cause remains unknown.
We begin this program in Russia, where firefighters, backed by the country's Air Force, are struggling to contain vast wildfires in Siberia.
And how unusual is it for this to be happening in Siberia, of all places?
Right, so fires in Siberia are fairly normal, but this is an unprecedented fire in terms of its size.
It may happen every year, but the scale and intensity of these fires has never been seen before, and scientists say they are burning much farther north than normal. And it's not only Russia, this is Alaska, where firefighters have been struggling to contain the spread.
The fires are engulfing more than 3.1 million hectares of land, an area roughly the size of Belgium. Environmentalists are calling it an ecological catastrophe.
Thick columns of smoke that can be seen from space have been drifting across remote regions of Siberia for weeks, pouring millions of tons of extra carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
In Alaska, 400 wildfires so far this year, with new ones igniting every day. Why? Well, one of the reasons is temperatures. The average June temperature in parts of Siberia, where the worst of the wildfires are ranging, was almost 10 degrees Celsius higher in June than the 1981 to 2000 long-term average.
And plus, there's the trees. Huge areas of trees are simply dying or simply burning down. The taiga is one of the green lungs of the world, and scientists say that these trees could take around 100 years to grow back. So it's understandable that Greenpeace is calling this an ecological catastrophe.
Wildfire season appears to be off to a slow start, and that's a welcome change after the 2 most deadly and destructive wildfire seasons on record.
An island paradise in flames. Fires on the island of Evia started Tuesday at about 3 a.m. and were spread by strong winds through dry vegetation, according to local media.
The fire tore through the forest, destroying everything.
Residents on Evia Island stunned and helpless as they watched emergency services struggle to contain the blaze.
As the wildfires rage, all local residents can do is watch as the flames creep closer to their homes.
56 fires broke out across the country within 2 days, a scene many say is all too familiar.
What can I say? The whole village is on fire. All our worldly possessions are going up in smoke. It's horrible.
One of the biggest deployments of firefighters in recent Spanish history is underway. Shock and disbelief in Gran Canaria. These villagers were forced out of their homes as large wildfires burn out of control across the Spanish island. They started spreading across mountainous areas on Saturday as high temperatures, strong winds and low humidity fuel the flames. This headline reads, "The Unstoppable Catastrophe." Gran Canaria in the Canary Islands is popular with tourists. Millions visit every year to enjoy its mountains and beaches, and while the Spanish government has assured them the wildfires are only confined to higher grounds, environmentalists are concerned that Spain could lose some of its most important nature reserves.
Kind of hazy over Seattle today, but sunny. Fires burning in eastern and central Washington are to blame, but a massive fire all the way over in Russia is adding to our hazy skies.
I'm not going to be able to stay here long because this fire is spreading, but
conservationist Paul Rosalie was at this fire on the Brazil-Peru border last month.
There are literally millions of animals in this forest that cannot escape right now.
How many animals were you able to rescue?
None. They were all burned.
His video and the hashtag Pray for Amazonia shared on social media today, but more needs to be done.
This should be the wake-up call that pulls us back from the edge.
In the northern hemisphere, parts of Siberia and Alaska are burning too, just weeks after a blistering July, the hottest month on record.
This is just one of several thousand fires currently consuming swaths of the Brazilian Amazon, and the world is watching.
The World Wildlife Fund says that almost 20% of the Amazon forest has disappeared in the last half-century, and this is only accelerating.
Now, the raging fires covered Sao Paulo, which is home to more than 12 million people, under a blanket of smoke so thick it blocked out the sun. We see video here of how Brazil's biggest city was plunged into darkness in the middle of the day. And there were also reports of black rain in Sao Paulo. A Twitter user posted a photo here of what she says is a glass of rainwater.
The hashtag Pray for Amazonas has been trending on Twitter, and other world leaders have reacted as well. Our house is burning, literally.
Calling the wildfires, quote, an international crisis.